Hey, I'm Mark,
And I'm Craig.
and this is Songwriter's Tales. And Craig, today, we have a legend.
We do.
I mean, uh, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Kyle Lehning.
Kyle Lehning. Well, if we're going to talk about Kyle Lehning, Mark, we have to talk about Randy Travis. We also have to talk about
England Dan and John Ford Coley,
Waylon
Paul,
Jennings.
Paul Davis.
On and on and on. My gosh, this man, anybody in Nashville and LA know who this man is, and now we know him better, and our audience that is listening is going to be blown away.
This guy is the nicest and the cool of the cool. So
For sure. So what do you say, Mark?
let's do it. Hey, it's Mark, and we are back at Songwriter's Tales with a legendary person that I've been listening to for years. So it's kind of really cool to be able to talk to Mr. Kyle Lehning. And Craig, I'll let you kind of kick things off and kind of do your usual, give the man his proper due, and we'll jump into this.
Absolutely. Hello to you, Mr. Lehning. How are you today?
I'm well, and you?
We're great. We're so glad that you're here. Just to let our listeners know, we came to know you because of a fellow named Rex Benson out in Los Angeles and Kevin Doherty in Nashville, and both of those are very good friends of Mark and mine, and so they were kind enough to hook us up, and you were kind enough to say yes. So we're
Yes.
glad you're here. Kyle is a producer. Actually, Kyle is a little bit of everything. Mark and I are going to get into this in a little bit, but
Yeah.
Kyle is not wearing a hat right now, but he wears all the hats at different times, which is pretty awesome in this business. He's specialized in all of them and does a great job. So, Mark, take over from here, my man, and let's get this thing going.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and get to the good stuff right off the top. I remember the first time I heard Randy Travis on the radio, and I thought, God, that guy's got such a great voice. And so then I got the first record, and I went. So instantly, as a songwriter, my first thing was who wrote these songs and who produced this record. And so I have known your name for years. I'll say right off the bat, it is an honor to talk to you because you're one of the reasons why I'm still writing songs all these years later, because of just, so thank you for that. Thank you for everything you've contributed to the industry. But talk about, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back, and you started. We read an article of yours. It was a while back. The article is a little older, but it was talking about you kind of starting with your wife and working, moving to. I think it was a club in Alabama where you were producing out of?
Jackson, Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so kind of where you cut your teeth as a producer. And I know my dad will kill me if I don't ask you later about being a jazz head, because I think all the good producers are jazz heads.
Yeah, that's my nemesis.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But talk about starting out, starting from ground zero, because anybody listening to this who's thinking, gosh, I want to get into it, but it's so hard. Even someone who's achieved everything you've achieved started at ground zero. So talk about what that's like and how you cut your teeth.
Well, I'm of that age of guys who saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show and went, wait a minute. And, so that was a seminal moment for me. I was already playing in a rock and roll band when I was, that was 64. So I was about to be 15. and I'd already been playing it. I've been playing in a band since I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
So, and sort of just stumbling around with it because it was rock and roll was weird at that time. And from 62 to 64, it was just kind of floundering around. I mean, Buddy Holly was dead. Uh, you know, Elvis had gone whatever. You know, I'm not sure what the heck, what that was. And then, well, a 13-year-old kid interested in music didn't really have a beacon. There was no sort of who do I follow? What do I was in a band playing covers of Bill Black's Combos instrumentals. That was
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot of our set. A couple of Ray Charles things that were pretty cool, but it was a weird time, and that was also, I think James Taylor refers to it as the great folk scare. Uh, folk music was Hootenanny was on TV, and I remember being about 11 or 12 years old when I really remember watching that show, thinking that's the first time I contemplated suicide. It was like, if if this is what if this is what the musical future is, I think I'm out. I mean, I'm sorry. I was just never a folk. It's like Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley was like, that's not my theme song.
Right.
So when the Beatles showed up, that was an instant, thank God that the clouds have parted, the sun is shining through, and whatever, and that's when I thought I got to get a guitar. I had a Wurlitzer electric piano.
Wow.
So that was one of those, wooden fiberboard flat top electric pianos.
Yeah.
And then I got a Gibson electric guitar and a little Fender Princeton, which I wish I still had.
Yeah.
A 65 blackface Princeton. It's like,
Oh,
dang.
you could buy a house with that now.
I traded it in for a Vox Super Beetle. Which
Do
I
you still have it?
I do.
Oh, good.
I do.
Well,
I still have the Super Beetle, but
it's not a bad
I
trade.
wish I had the Princeton back. Anyway, so that sort of focused me in, and looking at their music and just learning more and more about great pop music and stuff that was the key. But I was also, believe it or not, a jazz fan at that point. I had a great uncle. I grew up in Cairo, Illinois, a small town in southern Illinois, right between the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. And my dad was a second generation pharmacist, and my dad's uncle, my great uncle, was a doctor. And his name was Louis Ent. And everybody called him Doc Ent. And he did a number of things for me, but one of them was he was I have the tapes to prove it. He was a really good jazz baritone saxophone player, a Jerry Mulligan style baritone,
Mm-hmm.
and play, a no joke, really good player. But he was also a hi-fi nut. And I mean, this is a little town in southern Illinois, and you can look these speakers up. There were JBL Hartsfields. They're the size of refrigerators.
I remember those.
And they were awesome sounding speakers. He had two of them. He had stereo. When they first made them, it was just mono, and he bought a second one when stereo started happening. He had Macintosh preamps and amplifiers. He had a Crown 2-track tape recorder that he would drag around and record his little jazz groups with.
He was serious.
Yeah, totally into it. I'm 11 years old, sitting in his room in his house with my hair parted back from these speakers that he's blasting this stuff out. He wasn't shy about, volume. It was like a Woody Herman record sounded like you were sitting in front of Woody Herman's band,
Mm-hmm.
So I was raised on really good hi-fi, really good equipment. And it was funny because when I finally got to work in real recording studios, a lot of times I'd hear guys working and I'd think, that doesn't sound very good. I would think it should sound better than that because I grew up listening to stuff that sounded better than that. Yeah. So I had a bar that was the bar was high, and it was already set in my psyche, even when I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he was a huge influence on me. And I've talked, I still am grateful for it. It's amazing. Just amazing what sitting in, he died in the 80s, and every time I was able to, I would sit with him, and he was one of those guys who would say, "Son, you need to listen to this." And he'd put on an Oscar Peterson record, or Ella Fitzgerald, or some.
Mm-hmm.
He had awesome taste, and then he'd tell me what to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
See, listen to the bass on this record. He's really got. He would say he's put the bass in the band, because a lot of those recordings were upright bass,
Yeah.
And he was just really tuned in, and so I started critically listening, real early on.
That's a hell of an education. I mean, and it's funny when you say that. I'm flashing back to being a kid, and my dad sounds just like your great uncle. When he was writing at home, he would play music just to kind of vibe, I guess, get him in the mood to write. And it would be Oscar Peterson one day. It might be the Eagles one day. He had he still does, has an eclectic taste in music. So I'm vibing listening to you say that,
Yeah.
because that's exactly because my musical tastes are like that now too. I can listen to anything.
Yeah.
Just for that reason. Go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, it's interesting that your uncle, I think he knew what he was doing 100%. He probably saw something in you and saw what it was doing for you. Mark and I have all kind of people come on the show, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the threads that runs through our show with even with its artists or producers or publishers, is how music is just almost mystical. It's not just something, that you pick up at a grocery store, but there's something that you can't quite put your finger on that does with people, whether it's emotionally healing. Mark and I go down to Zach Brown's place every month and write with the veterans down there, and we've been doing it for years. And we talk with all the different songwriters, of course, all the people down there, and music is. I don't want to use the word magical, but I'm going to use it. I said mystical, but that and that. Yeah, it is. It is. And you as I want to kind of shift over here. We've got a good friend, Ed C. I know you know Ed.
Very well. Yeah, I love Ed.
Ed's been a great mentor of ours, and for 30 years now, and just a good buddy. And I think you guys might have been on the same path as engineer into production, I think, is if I read your bio properly. I know Ed. And it's been interesting because a lot of people that are listening to our show don't understand exactly the difference between an engineer and a producer. They probably heard the words. Would you just kind of give us a quick little lesson on that? Would you mind, Kyle?
Sure. I always try to use film analogy for that when people ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think producer's the wrong title. Um, a record producer, people think, well, that's the guy who puts up the money. And but a record producer is more like a movie director. It's more. I always thought musical director was a better title than record producer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the producers and sort of the first listener, the first person who's actually listening to everything. And but it's also, the producer helps the artist find songs if the artist is not a particularly great songwriter. And so the producer's job is to help find songs. If the artist is not a particularly great musician, then the producer's job is to surround him with the best musicians he possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of cast everything else that's involved in the actual making of the recording. The studio, the background singers, responsible for all those choices. I always do that in concert with the artist all the time. It's always, what do you think about this? How about that? It's their record. It's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
But and I love the role of producing records, producers, I think that's a great seat to sit in during the process. I mean, it's just been wonderful for me. But the engineer is sort of like the director of photography in a film. The engineer is there to technically capture all the performances that are given during the course of the making of the record. You know, he's there to make sure the right microphone is used on the hi-hat cymbal. And that's sort of like checking the right lens in the camera. You want the right view. And so the engineer is really there to capture those audio moments, and so that it's captured in the way that represents the music that's being made and the artist the best possible way. So that's a really important job too. And one of the thing that I love so much about Nashville when I first came to town to work here was how segregated those jobs were.
Yeah.
The engineer was the engineer, the producer was the producer, the songwriter was the songwriter, the publisher was the publisher, the studio musician, you know, all those roles were segregated, and now they're all wadded up together.
Yeah. They all blur, don't they?
Yeah, they blur, and that's okay. I mean, that's just that's the way it is. But you know, back in the day, boy, I'm starting to sound old. Back in the day, it was clean and it was clear. You knew what seat you were supposed to sit in, and engineers most of the time didn't say much. They just sat there, you know, pushed the tape record button, watched levels, made sure things sounded good, tried to catch problems if they came up, and tried to anticipate what was going to happen next so they could be a little ahead of the game. And I had a long career as an engineer before I completely translated into a producer.
Yeah, you know, that's cool because, and that's a great analogy actually, because most of the people I know do think that the producer is just the one who pays for the record.
Yeah.
Or at least that was the, you know, what everyone thought they were. So,
works the budget, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
And there's that being responsible for the budget is certainly part of the job, but not
But they looked
necessarily
at
putting up the money.
Yeah, they looked at it more like you were the money and the project manager, and not necessarily the creative force behind the record. And so, you know, as a producer, and we can go back to Randy because I read something about, you know, Randy Travis, and how do you? Because you helped him find those songs. You helped him because I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Randy, he did, at least in the beginning, he didn't do a lot of writing, did he? Was he?
He didn't. He did actually write a lot, just not very much. Very much of it was really good.
Okay.
But he got much better, and even on the first Storms of Life album,
was it I Told You So? Was that the one that was?
That wasn't on that. The one he wrote on that was a really cool song called "Reasons I Cheat."
Oh, I remember that song.
Yeah, I think it's the last cut on the second side. It's a really good country song.
Yeah.
He wrote that. And I'm thinking, I can't remember if "Send My Body Home on a Freight Train" is on that album or not. He wrote that one too. That might have been on the second album. But, you know, he wrote all the time.
Okay.
It was just, there were
But you found, you found all these great songs for him, Paul Overstreet songs, and so what was your? I mean, obviously it's a taste thing, or it's subjective, but how could you listen to a song and go, oh, there it is? I mean, you know, you hear On the Other Hand and you go, oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah, that's a fun story. So, well, first of all, it was really easy to deal with songs for Randy because he was absolutely stone cold clear about what he wanted to sing and what he didn't want to sing. There was never any sort of like, oh, I don't know, you know, it was never wishy-washy. He was a traditional country singer, and he was going to live or die by singing those kinds of songs. So, you know, something that had a too much of a pop tinge to it, or it just didn't. It was a piece of clothing that didn't fit him, and that he was so clear that it was really easy to not so easy to always find a great song, but it was easy to know when he was into something or when he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the thing was, in '85 when we started working together, nobody was looking for those kinds of songs. That was a time in Nashville that was sort of cosmopolitan country, is what they called
Yeah, I remember that.
it, which was syrupy uh, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really, country music was really a format where everybody was trying to get it to cross over to AC or pop.
Yeah.
If you did, that was, there's nobody was selling records that were just regular country, good old country records. Even Merle Haggard, I mean, maybe a couple 100,000, would be
Mm-hmm.
okay for Merle at that time, which is, kind of ridiculous sounding now, but
Yeah.
who made better records than Merle? So there just wasn't a lot of competition for those kinds of songs. And anyway, I got a taping that when we first started working with Randy, my studio was out in Hendersonville. It was called Morning Star, out in Hendersonville, Tennessee, which was a trek from downtown Nashville. And so publishers, a lot of times they wouldn't come out; they would just send me stuff to check out. And I got a tape in the mail, and I opened it up and I put it in, and it was On the Other Hand. And yeah, and and it was like, holy mackerel, this is a great song. And so I played it for Randy. And Martha Sharp at Warner Brothers was Randy's A&R person. And Martha was a songwriter. She had written big hits as a
Mm-hmm.
woman, as a songwriter. And it was awesome. So she had great taste in music and songs, and she knew what she was doing. And so between Randy and me and Martha and Randy's manager, Lib at the time, his manager wife at the time, Lib Hatcher, the four of us were really sort of the song trust. And it
Okay.
had to get through all four of us before it really was something we were going to consider recording. So those songs were available, and it was just
Wow.
really good timing.
Serendipitous. Yeah.
Yep. Pat Higdon sent me that in the mail from MCA,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so that was one of the first four songs we recorded. Keith Stegall, of whom I'm sure you guys have
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
spoken to or know well. Keith actually brought Randy to me. He was recording a live record with him out in the at the Nashville Palace, and I was producing Keith, who was an artist at Epic, and he brought.
I'd forgotten he was an artist. I've just known
Yeah.
him as a producer.
Yeah, we made a pretty cool record for Epic, and he came in one day in the studio before we started working and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I listened to about 20 seconds. I said, "Who is that?" And he said, Catfish Cook at the Nashville Palace. And I said, "That's the way he sounds." He said, "Yeah, that's live. It's a live recording." And so I went out to see him sing, and that's exactly what he sounded like. So, and
Voice.
nobody, he'd been turned down by everybody.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. He'd been turned down by everybody in Nashville. He'd been messing around in Nashville for 10 years, since he was 15, trying to get somebody to pay attention to him. And everybody said, nah, nah, nah.
Hey, everybody. Craig with Songwriter's Tales. Listen, episodes 17 through 19, you can pull them up. That's Jen and Jay Kyle, and they are on our Artist Spotlight. They're out of Nashville, and they're amazing. Check them out.